The crystal chandeliers of Le Bernardin cast prismatic rainbows across white tablecloths as Manhattan's elite gathered for the most exclusive business dinner of the year. The French Culinary Institute's annual fundraiser attracted billionaire CEOs, venture capitalists, and international moguls who casually discussed million-dollar deals between courses of molecular gastronomy. Amara Thompson moved gracefully between tables, her pressed white shirt pristine despite the demanding evening. At 28, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her natural hair pulled back in an elegant bun that framed her determined features. She'd been waiting tables at high-end establishments for 3 years now, saving every tip, every overtime hour, building toward something bigger. "Excuse me, girl." The sharp voice cut through the gentle murmur of conversation like a blade through silk. Amara turned toward table 7, where Victoria Blackstone sat like a queen surveying her kingdom. The 60-year-old CEO of Blackstone Global Enterprises commanded attention wherever she went. Her platinum hair styled in a severe bob, diamonds glittering at her throat, pale blue eyes that had stared down competitors in boardrooms across 6 continents. "Girl, are you deaf? I've been trying to get your attention for 5 minutes." Victoria's voice carried across nearby tables, causing conversations to pause mid-sentence. "This wine is completely wrong. I ordered the 2015 Chateau d'Yquem, not this. Budget selection." Amara approached the table with measured steps, her voice steady and professional. "I apologize for any confusion, ma'am. Let me check with the sommelier about your order." "Check with the sommelier?" Victoria's laugh was sharp, calculated to cut. "Sweetheart, I've been drinking wine since before you were born. I know what I ordered." She gestured dismissively. "Just bring me what I asked for, and try to pay attention this time." The woman beside Victoria, a tech executive whose startup Victoria had recently acquired, shifted uncomfortably. "Victoria, maybe we should just—" "No, Sarah. This is exactly what's wrong with service today." Victoria's voice rose another decibel. "No attention to detail, no respect for the customer. When I pay $300 a plate, I expect competence." Amara felt the familiar burn of humiliation creeping up her neck, the sensation she'd learned to swallow down in moments like these. Around them, other diners pretended not to stare while pulling out phones, recording what was clearly becoming a scene. "Of course, ma'am. I'll have the correct wine brought immediately." Amara's voice remained level, professional, giving nothing away. "And while you're at it," Victoria continued, her pale eyes scanning Amara from head to toe with obvious disdain, "maybe someone can explain to management why they're hiring people who clearly don't understand fine dining. This isn't McDonald's, dear." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Conversations at neighboring tables had completely stopped now. A young man at table 9 held his phone up, live streaming to his social media followers. The caption read, "NYC Elite Restaurant Drama, Live." Amara took a slow, deep breath. 3 years of saving, 3 years of enduring moments exactly like this one. She thought of her grandmother's voice. "Baby girl, dignity isn't something they can take from you. It's something you choose to keep." "I understand your concerns, ma'am. I'll address them right away." Each word was chosen carefully, delivered without a trace of the anger burning in her chest. "Your concerns?" Victoria leaned back in her chair, a predatory smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "This isn't about concerns, it's about competence. Something you clearly lack." The livestream viewer count was climbing. 847 viewers and growing. Comments flooded the screen. "This is painful to watch," and "Someone check this racist Karen," mixed with uglier responses that made the young man's stomach turn. Sarah, the tech executive, tried again. "Victoria, the wine is fine, really. Maybe we could just—" "Sarah, please. I'm trying to teach this girl something about professionalism." Victoria turned back to Amara, with the patronizing smile of someone accustomed to having her cruelty disguised as instruction. You see, in the real world, when you make a mistake, there are consequences. That's how business works, something I'm sure you wouldn't understand. The words hit their intended target. Amara felt them land, felt the familiar sting of being dismissed, diminished, reduced to nothing more than someone's stereotype. But something else stirred in her chest, something that had been growing stronger with each passing month, each dollar saved. Each night spent studying financial reports and market analyses until 3 a.m. "I see," Amara said quietly. "And what would you suggest as an appropriate consequence?" Victoria's smile widened. She sensed blood in the water. "Well, if this were my establishment, I'd start with proper training on wine service. Then perhaps a discussion with management about hiring standards." The live stream had reached 1,200 viewers. Comments flew past faster than anyone could read them. Someone had already started a hashtag. Le basketball restaurant drama Amara nodded slowly, as if genuinely considering Victoria's words. "That's interesting advice. Tell me, in your experience running businesses, how do you handle situations where the customer is mistaken?" The question hung in the air like a challenge wrapped in silk. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly, detecting something in Amara's tone that hadn't been there before. "Mistaken? About wine service?" Victoria's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Young lady, I think you're forgetting your place here." "My place." Amara repeated the words softly, almost thoughtfully. She glanced around the dining room, at the phones now openly recording, at the faces watching this moment unfold. Do I really belong here? The question seemed to shift something in the room's atmosphere. What had started as a simple service complaint was crystallizing into something far more charged, more public, more dangerous for everyone involved. Victoria sensed the shift and leaned forward like a shark detecting movement in the water. "That's exactly right. You need to understand your place. This isn't some casual neighborhood bistro. These are serious business people conducting serious business." She gestured broadly at the dining room, her diamonds catching the light. "Look around you. Do you see anyone else here who looks like, well, like you?" The pause before those last two words was deliberate, calculated to wound. The live stream viewer count hit 2,847. Comments erupted. "Did she just say what I think she said? This is getting ugly fast. Someone needs to check this woman." Racist alert. Amara felt the familiar cold fire that had sustained her through years of moments like this. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, she could feel her grandmother's strength in her spine, her mother's intelligence in her mind, and something else, something that had been building for 3 years of careful planning. "I see," Amara said, her voice carrying a new quality that made Victoria pause mid-sip of her wine. "And what exactly do you see when you look at me?" "I see someone who needs to focus on doing her job properly, instead of asking philosophical questions," Victoria snapped. "Bring me the sommelier, now." But Amara didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying Victoria with the sort of calm attention usually reserved for examining interesting specimens. "You ordered the 2015 Chateau d'Yquem, correct?" "Finally!" "Yes, that's what The dessert wine." Amara's voice was gentle, almost kind. "You ordered a dessert wine to accompany the seared duck breast?" Victoria's face flushed slightly. Around them, the more wine-knowledgeable diners exchanged glances. The sommelier, who had been watching from across the room, took a careful step closer. "I ordered what I wanted," Victoria said, but her voice had lost some of its earlier certainty. "Of course you did," Amara agreed, "and I brought you the wine that pairs with your entree as our sommelier recommended. The 2018 Burgundy you're currently drinking. But if you'd prefer the dessert wine with your duck..." The pause stretched like a tightrope. Victoria realized she was being offered a choice. Acknowledge the mistake quietly. or double down on being wrong in front of an increasingly large online audience. Pride won, as it often did. Don't lecture me about wine, girl. I've been drinking wine since before you were born. Victoria's voice rose again, attracting more attention from nearby tables. I know what I ordered, and I know what I want. The young man live streaming had moved closer, his phone capturing everything. His viewer count was approaching 4,000. Someone in the comments had identified the restaurant and was calling for people to show up. Victoria, Sarah whispered urgently. Maybe we should just— No. Victoria turned her fury on her dinner companion. This is exactly the problem with this generation. No respect, no understanding of hierarchy. This girl thinks she can educate me about wine? She turned back to Amara with renewed venom. Let me make something very clear to you. I've built a billion-dollar empire. I employ thousands of people. I've dined with presidents and kings. So when I tell you to bring me a specific wine, you bring it. You don't question it, you don't correct it, and you certainly don't stand there looking at me like I'm the problem. Amara absorbed the words like someone catching raindrops, seemingly untouched by their intended sting. A billion-dollar empire. That's impressive. What industry? The question was so unexpected, so calmly delivered, that Victoria actually paused. What? Your empire? What industry? I'm genuinely curious about how you built it. Victoria's eyes narrowed further. There was something in this waitress's tone that didn't fit, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up, but her pride pushed her forward. Real estate development, primarily. International markets. Not that it's any of your concern. International. Amara nodded thoughtfully. So you work with diverse markets, diverse clients, diverse partners. What's your point? Just wondering how that works, Amara said, her voice still perfectly professional, perfectly calm. Building international business relationships when you— How did you put it? Notice when people don't look like you. The live stream exploded. Comments flooded in so fast they became a blur. She went there. Waitress is not playing. This woman is about to get served. Plot twist incoming? Victoria's face had gone pale, then flushed deep red. Excuse me? Are you implying that I'm not implying anything, Amara said gently. I'm just trying to understand your perspective. You seem to have very strong opinions about who belongs in spaces like this. The maître d' had appeared at the edge of the dining area, watching the situation with obvious concern. The live stream had reached 6,200 viewers, and someone had called the restaurant's main number. The hostess was fielding calls from local news stations. My perspective, Victoria said, her voice dangerous and low, is that service staff should focus on providing service, not on running their mouths. Service. Amara repeated the word as if tasting it. Yes, I can see how that would be important to you. Knowing your place, staying in your lane, not overstepping boundaries. Exactly. The thing is, Amara continued, her voice still maddeningly calm, I've always been curious about boundaries. Who gets to set them? Who gets to cross them? Who decides who belongs where? Victoria sensed danger but couldn't identify its source. This conversation had slipped completely beyond her control, and she didn't understand how. The waitress was still standing there, still speaking respectfully, still doing nothing overtly challenging. But everything felt wrong. I think, Victoria said, standing up from her chair with dramatic flair, that I need to speak to your manager. This level of insubordination is completely unacceptable. Of course, Amara said. I'm sure management would be very interested in this conversation. The way she said it, with just the hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth, sent a chill down Victoria's spine. But it was too late to back down now. Too many people were watching. Too many phones were recording. Too much pride was on the line. Good, because this is exactly the kind of situation that requires immediate action. Victoria looked around the room, addressing her audience. This is what happens when standards slip. When businesses forget the importance of proper hiring practices. Amara nodded slowly, as if seriously considering Victoria's words. Standards, proper hiring practices. Yes, I can see how those would be important to someone in your position. Exactly. And if management won't handle this properly, then perhaps it's time to consider whether this establishment deserves the patronage of serious business people. The threat was clear. Fix this situation, or lose the business of Victoria Blackstone and everyone in her considerable network. But Amara just smiled. Actually smiled for the first time all evening. That's an interesting point, Ms. Blackstone. Tell me, how long have you been coming to Le Bernardin? As Victoria struggled to process the shift in Amara's demeanor, memories flickered through Amara's mind like scenes from a film she'd lived but never discussed. Growing up in Detroit, where her grandmother had cleaned houses for families who barely acknowledged her existence, watching her mother work 3 jobs to pay for Amara's private school education, coming home exhausted but never too tired to help with homework. The sting of being the only black student in advanced classes, bearing the weight of representation while trying to simply be a kid. I've been a member here for 8 years, Victoria answered, suspicious of the question but unable to resist asserting her status. 8 years. Amara had been waiting tables here for 3 years, and in that time she'd served Victoria Blackstone exactly 7 times. She remembered each encounter because Victoria made herself memorable, never in good ways, always finding fault, always making pointed comments about standards and quality that somehow always seemed directed at the staff who looked like Amara. But Victoria had no idea that this girl had graduated summa cum laude from Wharton, no idea that she'd turned down offers from Goldman Sachs and McKinsey to pursue something more meaningful. No idea that every insult, every dismissive gesture, every moment of casual cruelty had been carefully catalogued and remembered. The live stream had reached 8,900 viewers. Someone in the comments had recognized Victoria and posted links to Blackstone Global Enterprises' website. Others were sharing stories of their own encounters with workplace discrimination, their own moments of being made to feel invisible. 8 years, Amara repeated thoughtfully. That's a long relationship with an establishment. You must really value what this place represents. I value quality, Victoria said stiffly. Standards of excellence that seem to be slipping recently. The insult was veiled but unmistakable. Amara felt it land the way it was intended to, but something else happened simultaneously. A door in her mind opened to reveal the careful plans she'd been building for 3 years. Every month, she'd saved 80% of her tips and wages. Every free moment had been spent studying market reports, analyzing investment opportunities, building financial models that would have impressed her former professors. The other servers thought she was saving for graduate school. They had no idea she was building something far more ambitious. Standards, Amara mused. You know, I think about that a lot. What makes some people feel entitled to judge others, to decide who belongs where, who deserves respect? Victoria's jaw tightened. I think this conversation has gone far enough. Where is your manager? Coming, I'm sure. But while we wait, I'm curious about something else. You mentioned international business, working with diverse markets. How do you think your global partners would feel about this interaction? She gestured subtly at the phone's recording, the live stream that was being shared across social platforms, the growing crowd of diners who had stopped pretending not to watch. What are you implying? Victoria's voice carried a new edge of uncertainty. Just wondering about brand reputation. How companies maintain their image when videos like this go viral. You understand the power of social media in today's business environment. The words were delivered with perfect politeness, but they hit Victoria like ice water. For the first time, she seemed to realize that this moment was being broadcast to thousands of people. that her words and behavior were being recorded and shared and discussed by strangers across the internet. "Are you threatening me?" Victoria asked, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Not at all. I'm just observing that we live in a very connected world. Actions have consequences that ripple far beyond their original context." Amara's smile was gentle, almost sympathetic. "I imagine someone in your position would understand that better than most." The live stream viewer count hit 12,000. Local news stations were sending crews. Someone had created a hashtag that was beginning to trend. The restaurant's phone was ringing constantly. Victoria looked around the dining room with new eyes, suddenly seeing not an audience for her authority, but witnesses to her behavior. The servers who had stopped their work to watch. The diners recording everything on their phones. The maître d' approaching with obvious concern. "This is ridiculous," Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I'm a paying customer. I have a right to expect proper service." "You absolutely do," Amara agreed. "Just as every person in this room has a right to be treated with basic human dignity." The words hung in the air like a judgment. Victoria felt the shift in the room's energy, the way conversations had stopped, the way people were looking at her, not with the deference she was accustomed to, but with something that looked very much like disapproval. For the first time in the evening, Victoria Blackstone felt uncertain. The waitress standing before her hadn't raised her voice, hadn't been disrespectful, hadn't done anything she could point to as unprofessional. But somehow, the balance of power had shifted completely. "Who are you?" Victoria asked quietly. Amara's smile widened just a fraction. "I'm exactly who I appear to be, Ms. Blackstone. The question is whether you're prepared to discover who that actually is." The maître d', a distinguished French gentleman named Henri, who had worked at Bernardin for 15 years, approached, their table with the measured steps of someone walking into a battlefield. His practiced eye took in the scene, the recording phones, the hushed conversations, the tension crackling between Victoria Blackstone and his server. "Is there a problem here?" Henri asked, his accent lending gravity to the simple question. Victoria straightened, sensing an opportunity to reassert control. "Yes, there absolutely is. This employee has been incredibly unprofessional. I've requested to speak with management about her conduct." Henri looked at Amara, who stood with the same calm composure she'd maintained throughout the entire exchange. "Mademoiselle Thompson, what is your perspective on this situation?" "Ms. Blackstone ordered wine," Amara said simply. "I brought her the wine our sommelier recommended for her meal. She preferred something different. We've been discussing the difference of opinion." The understatement was so profound that several nearby diners actually laughed. The livestream comments exploded with appreciation for Amara's diplomacy. "That's not what happened at all." Victoria's voice rose sharply. "She questioned my wine knowledge, made inappropriate comments about my business practices, and showed complete disrespect for customer service standards." Henri nodded thoughtfully. As maître d', he'd dealt with difficult customers before, but this situation felt different. The energy was wrong, the dynamics were off, and there were far too many people recording for this to be a simple service complaint. "I see. Ms. Blackstone, you are, of course, a valued guest, and Mademoiselle Thompson is one of our most professional servers. Perhaps we can resolve this quietly." Quietly? Victoria looked around at the phones, the staring faces, the live stream that had now reached 15,000 viewers. This has gone far beyond quiet. This employee needs to be disciplined, and I need assurance that it won't happen again. Amara spoke for the first time in several minutes, her voice carrying a new quality that made everyone lean forward slightly. "Mr. Henri, may I ask Miss Blackstone a question?" Henri looked surprised. "Of course." Amara turned to Victoria with the sort of polite attention usually reserved for job interviews or board meetings. "Ms. Blackstone, In your international business dealings, what languages do you speak? The question was so unexpected that Victoria actually blinked. What does that have to do with anything? I'm just curious. You mentioned working with international partners. Communication must be important in those relationships. Victoria sensed a trap but couldn't identify it. I speak English, obviously. Some Spanish. Enough to conduct business. Ah. Amara nodded as if this explained something important. Then she turned to Henri and spoke in perfect, fluent French. Monsieur Henri, cette femme a passé la soirée à m'insulter de façon subtile mais constante. Elle a fait des commentaires sur ma place ici, sur les standards d'embauche et sur qui appartient à des espaces comme celui-ci. Je pense qu'il est temps qu'elle comprenne exactement à qui elle s'adresse. Henri's eyebrows rose dramatically. Around them, the few French speakers in the dining room began murmuring to each other. Victoria looked between them with growing alarm. What did you just say? Victoria demanded. Amara smiled serenely. I was explaining to Henri that you've had concerns about service standards this evening. That's not what you said. I know you weren't talking about service. You're right, Amara acknowledged. I was speaking about respect, about dignity, about the difference between being a valued customer and being a bully. The word bully hit the dining room like a thunderclap. Conversation stopped entirely. The live stream comments went wild. Did she just call her a bully? This waitress has nerves of steel. Plot armor activated. Where is this going? Victoria's face cycled through several shades of red. How dare you? I demand to speak to the owner. This is completely unacceptable. Henri cleared his throat. Perhaps, Miss Blackstone, it would be best to lower your voice. The other guests can see exactly what's happening here. Victoria gestured wildly at the room. This employee is being insubordinate, disrespectful, and completely unprofessional. Amara reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her phone. Not to record, but to check something quickly. The notification that had buzzed during Victoria's latest tirade was exactly what she'd been expecting. Ms. Blackstone, Amara said, holding up her phone, I think you should see this. Victoria recoiled. I'm not interested in whatever. It's the stock price for Blackstone Global Enterprises. It seems to be dropping rather quickly in after-hours trading. The color drained from Victoria's face. That's impossible. The markets are closed. After-hours trading, Amara explained gently, as if speaking to a child. It happens when news breaks that might affect a company's value. Social media trends, viral videos, public relations incidents. Victoria grabbed for the phone, but Amara pulled it back calmly. The hashtag Blackstone Restaurant Racism is trending on Twitter. Someone identified you about 20 minutes ago. The live stream had reached 22,000 viewers. Local news crews were arriving outside the restaurant. Someone had posted Victoria's business contact information, and Blackstone Global's phones were reportedly ringing non-stop. This is insane, Victoria whispered. You can't be serious. I'm very serious about consequences, Amara said. You said earlier that actions have consequences, that mistakes require accountability. I couldn't agree more. Henri was watching this exchange with growing fascination and concern. Mademoiselle Thompson, perhaps we should— Actually, Amara interrupted gently, there's something else I should mention. Ms. Blackstone, you asked about my qualifications earlier. Whether I understand fine dining, whether I belong in spaces like this? Victoria said nothing, her eyes fixed on Amara's phone where the stock ticker showed Blackstone Global down 3.2% in after-hours trading. I have a degree in international business from Wharton. I speak 4 languages fluently, including French, which I learned during my semester abroad in Paris. I've studied wine extensively, both academically and personally. I know exactly which wine pairs with seared duck breast, and I know exactly what Chateau d'Yquem is designed to accompany. The revelation hit the room like a physical force. Murmurs erupted from nearby tables. The live stream comments exploded with shock and admiration. But more importantly, Amara continued, her voice growing stronger. I know what it feels like to be dismissed, to be diminished, to be told that I don't belong somewhere based on nothing more than how I look. And I know that staying silent about it only enables people like you to continue treating people like me as if we're invisible. Victoria's mouth opened and closed without sound. Everything she thought she understood about this situation had just been turned upside down. So, when you ask if I belong here, Amara said, gesturing to the elegant dining room around them, the answer is yes. I belong here exactly as much as you do. The difference is that I treat the people around me with respect. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from somewhere in the dining room, someone began to applaud. Others joined in. Within moments, the entire restaurant was clapping, not for the show, but for the dignity with which one person had refused to be diminished. Victoria Blackstone, Billionaire CEO, sat in her chair looking smaller than she had all evening. Do you know who you're talking to? She whispered. Amara's smile was radiant. Miss Blackstone, I know exactly who I'm talking to. The question is, do you? The applause had barely died down when Victoria's phone began buzzing incessantly. Text messages, missed calls, email notifications, all flooding in as the viral storm surrounding her public humiliation gained momentum. She stared at the screen in horror as notifications from her board members, major clients, and media outlets poured in. This is insane, Victoria muttered, scrolling through messages with shaking hands. This can't be happening. The livestream had exploded to over 35,000 viewers. Comments were flying past so quickly they became a blur of outrage, support for Amara, and calls for boycotts of Blackstone Global. Someone had already created a petition demanding Victoria's resignation, and it had garnered 2,000 signatures in the past 10 minutes. Henri approached their table again, this time with obvious urgency. Ms. Blackstone, I'm afraid we have a situation. There are news crews gathering outside, and our phone system is overwhelmed with calls. News crews? Victoria's voice cracked slightly. What news crews? Channel 7, Fox 5, and several others. They're requesting interviews about the incident. Henri's diplomatic training was being severely tested. Amara stood calmly, as if she were simply finishing up her shift. Mr. Henri, I think it might be best if I spoke to the media. This situation seems to be escalating beyond what any of us anticipated. No! Victoria shot up from her chair so quickly she knocked over her wine glass, the correct wine that Amara had brought her. The burgundy spread across the white tablecloth like spilled blood. You are not speaking to anyone. This is all your fault. The outburst was caught on multiple phones, and the live stream audience watched in real time as Victoria's composure completely disintegrated. The young man streaming had positioned himself perfectly to capture her meltdown. My fault? Amara's voice remained infuriatingly calm. Ms. Blackstone, I haven't done anything except serve you dinner and respond to your questions honestly. Honestly? Victoria's laugh was sharp and bitter. You manipulated this entire situation. You baited me. You recorded everything. I recorded nothing, Amara interrupted gently. She gestured to the dozen phones pointed in their direction. These are your neighbors, your fellow diners, ordinary people who witnessed how you chose to treat someone you perceived as beneath you. Sarah, the tech executive who had been trapped at the table throughout this entire ordeal, finally found her voice. Victoria, maybe we should just leave. Call your PR team, handle this privately. But Victoria was beyond rational thought. The stock price continued to drop, now down 4.8% in after-hours trading, and social media was exploding with commentary about Blackstone Global's corporate culture. Someone had found old interviews where Victoria had spoken about maintaining standards in hiring, and those quotes were being circulated with new context. Handle this privately? Victoria turned on Sarah with fury. There is no privately anymore. This person has destroyed everything. She whirled back to face Amara, jabbing her finger in the air. Do you have any idea what you've done? I employ 12,000 people. My company generates billions in revenue. One viral video can't destroy what I've built. Amara tilted her head thoughtfully. You're right. One video can't destroy what you've built, but it can reveal what you've built it on. The comment hit like a physical blow. Victoria staggered slightly, and Henri moved to steady her. What's that supposed to mean? Victoria whispered. It means, Amara said, pulling out her phone again, that when people see how you treat service workers, they start wondering how you treat employees, partners, vendors, anyone who has less power than you do. She showed Victoria the screen. The hashtag The Blackstone Employee Stories was trending, with current and former employees sharing their own experiences with workplace discrimination and hostile company culture. This is impossible, Victoria breathed, reading through testimonials from people she'd forgotten she'd ever met. These people are... They're what, Ms. Blackstone? Amara's voice carried a new steel edge. They're lying? They're making it up? Or are they people whose voices finally have a platform? The livestream audience had grown to over 45,000. Major news outlets were picking up the story. Someone had created a timeline of Victoria's public statements over the years, highlighting patterns of coded language about cultural fit and maintaining standards. Victoria's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed her head of PR, undoubtedly calling with damage control strategies that felt increasingly futile. I need to take this, Victoria said, stepping away from the table. But Amara followed her, speaking loudly enough for the phones to pick up her words. Ms. Blackstone, before you make any calls, I think you should know something else. Victoria turned back, her eyes wild with panic and rage. What? The young man who's been live-streaming this evening? His name is Marcus Chen. He's a business journalist for TechCrunch. The woman at table 12 recording on her phone? That's Judge Patricia Williams from the Southern District. The couple near the window? They're major shareholders in Blackstone Global. With each revelation, Victoria's face grew paler. The room suddenly felt much smaller, much more dangerous than it had minutes before. You planned this? Victoria whispered. This was all a setup. Amara shook her head. Ms. Blackstone, I plan many things, but I didn't plan for you to treat me the way you did tonight. That was entirely your choice. Marcus Chen, the journalist, stood up from his table and approached them with his phone still streaming. Ms. Blackstone, Marcus Chen from TechCrunch. Would you care to comment on the allegations emerging about Blackstone Global's workplace culture? No comment. Victoria backed away as if he were holding a weapon instead of a phone. What about the stock price decline? Your board members are reportedly calling an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. Any response? I said no comment? Victoria's voice cracked with hysteria. Judge Williams approached from another direction, her expression stern. Ms. Blackstone, as someone who's sat through countless discrimination cases, I feel compelled to say that what I witnessed here tonight was deeply troubling. You don't understand the context, Victoria began. I understand that a young professional was doing her job with grace and dignity while being subjected to what appeared to be racially charged harassment, Judge Williams interrupted. Context doesn't change behavior. Victoria looked around the room desperately, seeking allies or escape routes. But every face she saw held disappointment, disgust, or open hostility. The elite dining room that had once felt like her natural habitat now felt like a courtroom where she was the defendant. This isn't over, Victoria said, her voice barely audible. I won't let you destroy everything I've worked for. Amara met her eyes directly. Ms. Blackstone, I haven't destroyed anything. I've simply held up a mirror. What you see in it is entirely up to you. The live stream hit 50,000 viewers as Victoria Blackstone, Billionaire CEO, stood surrounded by phones and cameras, realizing that the ground beneath her empire was shifting. As the chaos swirled around them, Amara reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small, elegant business card. She placed it on the table between herself and Victoria with the calm precision of someone playing their final card in a high-stakes game. Victoria stared at the card as if it might bite her. The embossed lettering read, Amara Thompson, founder and managing partner, Thompson Capital Ventures. That's impossible, Victoria whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Marcus Chen zoomed his camera in on the business card, and the livestream audience exploded with comments. Plot twist of the century. She's a venture capitalist? This woman owns the game. The audacity to treat a VC like a servant. Amara straightened, and something fundamental shifted in her posture. The deferential server disappeared, replaced by someone who clearly belonged in boardrooms and corner offices. Thompson Capital Ventures. We specialize in funding minority-owned businesses and supporting diversity initiatives in corporate America. Victoria's knees buckled slightly. She gripped the back of her chair for support. You can't be, I can be, and I am. Amara's voice carried new authority. 3 years ago, I sold my fintech startup for $47 million. I've been working here part-time while building my investment firm. Market research, you understand. Learning how power dynamics actually work in practice versus theory. Henri, who had been watching this revelation unfold, suddenly snapped to attention. Mon Dieu, you are the Thompson who purchased the controlling stake in Bernardin's parent company last month. Amara smiled. Guilty as charged, though I prefer to think of it as investing in excellence and ensuring that excellence extends to how we treat every person who walks through these doors. The dining room erupted in murmurs. Several diners were frantically Googling Thompson Capital Ventures on their phones. The search results were impressive. $200 million in assets under management, partnerships with major corporations for diversity initiatives, and glowing profiles in Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and the Wall Street Journal. Victoria sank into her chair, the fight draining out of her. You own this restaurant. I own part of the company that owns this restaurant, among others, Amara corrected. But more importantly, I own companies that have partnerships with Blackstone Global. Had partnerships, I should say. She pulled out her phone and made a quick call, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. Jason, it's Amara. Yes, I saw the news coverage. Pull the Thompson recommendation from the Blackstone deal immediately. Full divestment by market open. Yes, I'm sure. Send the termination notice tonight. Victoria watched in horror as Amara ended the call. What have you done? I've protected my investors, Amara said simply. Thompson Capital had recommended Blackstone Global for a major infrastructure partnership worth approximately $150 million. Given tonight's revelations about company culture and leadership character, I can no longer in good conscience support that recommendation. The live stream audience had grown to over 65,000 viewers. Business journalists were joining the stream, recognizing the significance of what was unfolding. This wasn't just a viral video anymore, it was a real-time corporate catastrophe. Judge Williams approached their table again, this time with obvious respect for Amara. Ms. Thompson, I've followed your work with criminal justice reform initiatives. This evening's display might be relevant to some pending discrimination cases involving Blackstone Global. I'd be happy to provide testimony if needed, Your Honor, Amara replied formally. Corporate accountability is one of Thompson Capital's core values. Victoria found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. You planned this entire thing. You set me up, Ms. Blackstone. Amara's tone was patient, almost pitying. I planned to work my shift, serve dinner, and continue my research into workplace dynamics. You planned to humiliate someone you saw as beneath you. We both succeeded. Marcus Chen stepped closer with his camera. Ms. Thompson, can you comment on the broader implications of tonight's events for corporate diversity and inclusion? Amara turned to face the camera directly, her bearing now unmistakably that of a successful executive. What you witnessed tonight happens every day across America. Service workers, retail employees, junior staff members, they're subjected to abuse and discrimination because people assume they're powerless to respond. She gestured to Victoria, who sat slumped in her chair. Ms. Blackstone made assumptions about my worth, my intelligence, my right to dignity based entirely on my appearance and my job tonight. She felt entitled to demean me because she believed there would be no consequences. And now there are consequences, Marcus prompted. Now there are consequences, Amara confirmed. Not because I'm secretly wealthy or powerful, but because in 2025, actions have reached beyond the moment they occur. Social media democratizes accountability in ways previous generations couldn't imagine. Victoria's phone buzzed with another call from her board of directors. She stared at it without answering. The question now, Amara continued, looking directly at Victoria, is what Ms. Blackstone chooses to do with this moment. Does she double down on defending behavior that's clearly indefensible? Or does she use this as an opportunity for genuine reflection and change? Victoria looked up at her, tears of rage and humiliation streaming down her face. What do you want from me? Amara's smile was sad but not unkind. I want you to be better. Your employees deserve better. Your shareholders deserve better. You deserve better than this version of yourself. The live stream peaked at 72,000 viewers as two women, one at the height of power, one who had been dismissed as powerless, faced each other across a table scattered with the ruins of assumptions and arrogance. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, broken only by the constant buzz of Victoria's phone and the distant sounds of news crews setting up outside. The dining room had become eerily quiet, every patron absorbed in watching this real-time reckoning unfold. Victoria stared at her hands, her voice barely audible when she finally spoke. My father started this company with nothing. Immigrant family, worked construction, until he saved enough to buy his first property. I've spent 40 years building what he dreamed of. And what do you think he would say about how you've chosen to use that power tonight? Amara asked gently. The question hit its mark. Victoria's composure cracked entirely, and for the first time, she looked vulnerable rather than vicious. He would be ashamed. He always said that success without character was just expensive failure. Marcus Chen continued streaming, but he had lowered his phone slightly, sensing the shift in tone. The comments had evolved from celebratory to thoughtful, as viewers witnessed what appeared to be a genuine moment of reckoning. Ms. Blackstone, Amara said, sitting down across from her, you have a choice right now. You can go home, hire crisis management firms, and try to weather this storm while changing nothing. Or you can use this moment to become the leader your employees deserve. Victoria looked up, her makeup ruined by tears. How? How do I come back from this? The stock price? The board? The employees who are sharing their stories? It's over. It's only over if you let it be, Amara replied. Thompson Capital has helped dozens of companies rebuild after culture crises. But it requires genuine commitment to change, not just damage control. She pulled out her phone and showed Victoria a document. This is a comprehensive diversity and inclusion program we've developed. Independent oversight, mandatory training for leadership, anonymous reporting systems, and measurable accountability metrics. Victoria read through the summary, her business mind engaging despite her emotional state. This would cost millions to implement. The board will never approve it. The board will approve whatever keeps the company from bankruptcy, Amara said matter-of-factly. Your stock has dropped 8% since this stream started. Major clients are already calling for meetings. You can frame this as proactive leadership or reactive damage control. The choice is yours. Judge Williams approached their table one final time. Ms. Blackstone, I'll be watching very closely to see how Blackstone Global responds to tonight's events. The legal system has many pending cases involving workplace discrimination, and corporate leadership's response to public accountability moments like this. Well, it matters, Victoria nodded numbly. I understand, Your Honor. Henri cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps it would be best if we concluded this evening's discussion. The restaurant staff needs to begin closing procedures. Amara stood, transforming back into the professional server with fluid grace. Of course, Miss Blackstone, your bill for this evening. She placed the check on the table with a small smile. Wine service included. Victoria looked at the bill, $347 for a dinner that had cost her far more than money, and pulled out her credit card with shaking hands. Ms. Blackstone, Amara said as Victoria signed the receipt, I meant what I said about helping companies change. If you're serious about doing better, Thompson Capital's door is open. But the commitment has to be real, not performative. Victoria met her eyes for the first time in what felt like hours. Why would you help me after this? Because the goal isn't to destroy people or companies, Amara replied. It's to create a world where moments like tonight don't happen anymore. Where people are treated with dignity, regardless of what job they're doing or what they look like. Victoria nodded slowly, pocketing her credit card. I'll call you. Tomorrow. After I talk to the board. As Victoria gathered her purse and coat, preparing to face the media gauntlet outside, she turned back one last time. The wine, she said quietly. The burgundy was perfect with the duck. Amara's smile was radiant. I know. 6 weeks later, the Le Bernardin incident, as media outlets had dubbed it, had become a Harvard Business School case study in corporate accountability and the power of social media to democratize justice. Blackstone Global had implemented Thompson Capital's comprehensive diversity program, with Victoria personally participating in unconscious bias training alongside her leadership team. The company's stock had not only recovered, but reached new highs as investors responded positively to the transparency and genuine reform efforts. Marcus. Chen's live stream had been viewed over 2.3 million times across platforms, spawning hundreds of response videos and becoming a catalyst for the Dignity at Work movement. Servers, retail workers, and service professionals across the country began sharing their own stories of workplace disrespect, creating a groundswell of support for better treatment of frontline employees. Victoria had kept her promise. Thompson Capital now managed Blackstone Global's diversity initiatives, and the partnership had become a model for other corporations seeking authentic cultural change rather than superficial PR fixes. Mara continued working at Le Bernardin one night per week, not because she needed the income, but because she believed in staying connected to the reality of service work even as her investment firm grew. She had become a sought-after speaker on corporate responsibility and social justice, but she never forgot the power of small, everyday interactions. The live stream's most viral moment, Amara's calm statement that dignity isn't something they can take from you, it's something you choose to keep, had been turned into motivational posters, social media graphics, and even tattoos. But for Amara, the real victory wasn't in the viral fame or the business success that followed. It was in the emails from service workers who said they felt more empowered to demand respect, and the messages from business leaders committing to examine their own biases. Sometimes justice is served one conversation at a time. If this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We share powerful stories of justice, empowerment, and people standing up for what's right every week. Drop a comment below. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated unfairly because of their job or appearance? How did you handle it? Share this video with someone who needs to remember their worth isn't determined by other people's assumptions. For more incredible stories of hidden identity, reveals, and justice served, check out our Undercover Boss and Justice Served playlists. Remember, your dignity is non-negotiable, and sometimes the person you underestimate might just surprise you.